Dr. Alina Vasquez had always worked better without shoes. The cold metal floor of the lab helped her think clearly. She stood at her workstation on the research ship Kepler station, looking through her microscope at strange purple fungi samples. Her bare feet felt every tiny vibration that traveled through the ship's hull. The fungi came from a planet 3 systems away. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. Each sample glowed with a soft light that changed colors when Alina touched it. She'd been studying them for 6 months now, trying to understand how they could survive in the freezing vacuum of space. Alina was alone in Lab Section C. Her team members had gone to the main deck for dinner an hour ago. She preferred working alone. Their people made noise and asked too many questions. The fungi needed quiet observation and gentle handling. She picked up one sample with her tweezers. It was no bigger than her thumbnail, but it pulsed like a tiny heart. She placed it under the scanner and began recording notes on her tablet. The fungi seemed to react to her presence. When she moved closer, they glowed brighter. When she stepped back, they dimmed. The research station was far from Earth. It took 8 months to travel here through jump space. Alina and her team of 12 scientists had come to study the rare life forms that lived in this distant system. Most of the creatures they found were simple, but these fungi were different. They seemed almost intelligent. Alina heard a strange sound from somewhere. Deep in the station, it was like metal being torn apart. She looked up from her microscope, but did not move from her spot. The sound came again, louder this time. It echoed through the halls like a scream. Her communication device buzzed. Dr. Martinez's voice came through, shaky and full of fear. "Alina, where are you? Something is wrong. The outer hull has been breached. We need to get to the escape pods right now." Alina turned off her device without answering. She had heard stories about pirates in this part of space. But the research station had strong shields and weapons. Nothing should be able to break through their defenses so easily. The lights in her lab flickered. Emergency sirens began to wail throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed on and off, casting strange shadows on the walls. Alina remained perfectly still, watching her fungi samples. They were glowing much brighter now, pulsing faster than before. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside her lab. But these were not human footsteps. They made a clicking sound, like claws on metal. Alina had studied enough alien species to recognize that sound. These were Kethver. The Kethver were insect-like creatures from the Vega system. They stood over 6 feet tall and had 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that could stop most human weapons. They were known throughout the galaxy as raiders and slavers. They captured other species and sold them to the highest bidder. Alina's heart rate stayed perfectly normal. She continued her work as if nothing was happening. The fungi seemed to sense her calmness. Their pulsing slowed down to match her breathing. The footsteps stopped right outside her lab door. Alina could hear clicking and chittering sounds. Kethver were talking to each other in their own language. She had learned some of their words during her studies, but not enough to understand full conversations. The lab door exploded inward. 3 Kethver warriors rushed into the room. Their compound eyes swept the area, looking for threats. There. Mandibles clicked together rapidly as they spotted Alina standing calmly at her workstation. The largest warrior stepped forward. His shell was darker than the others, marked with scars from many battles. He was clearly the leader. He pointed one clawed hand at Alina and spoke in broken human language. "You come with us, soft one. You make good price at auction." Alina did not look up from her microscope. She adjusted the focus and made another note on her tablet. The warrior clicked his mandibles in confusion. Most humans screamed or ran when they saw Kethver warriors. This one acted like they were not even there. "Did you hear me, human?" the warrior said, taking another step closer. "You are now property of the Kethver Empire." Alina finally looked up. Her brown eyes were calm and curious, like she was studying a new specimen. She looked at each warrior carefully, noting their height, their scars, and the way they moved. Her gaze was so intense that the smallest warrior actually took a step backward. "Interesting," Alina said quietly. "Your exoskeleton shows signs of rapid calcium buildup. That suggests a high-protein diet with mineral supplements." Are you from the outer colonies or the homeworld? The lead warrior blinked his compound eyes in confusion. He had never heard a human ask questions like this during a raid. Most humans either begged for mercy or tried to fight. This one was treating him like a research subject. What does it matter, soft one? You will learn soon enough where we come. From Alina nodded and made another note on her tablet. And your respiratory system appears to be based on spiracles rather than lungs. That means you process oxygen differently than we do. How interesting. The second warrior chittered nervously to the leader. Lena could pick out a few words. They were talking about her strange behavior. They had never encountered a human who acted this way. Alina saved her notes and carefully placed her fungi samples in protective containers. She moved slowly and deliberately, ignoring the three-armed warriors who could kill her in seconds. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. We should go, Alina said calmly. I assume you have a ship waiting. The lead warrior stared at her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his companions. They moved to surround Alina, but she was already walking toward the door. She paused only to pick up a small bag containing her personal research tools as they walked through the corridors. Of the research station, Alina saw the damage the Kethfer had caused. Blast holes marked the walls. Emergency lights flickered in the smoke-filled air, but she saw no bodies. Colleagues had either escaped or been captured alive. The Kethfer ship was docked at the main airlock. It was a sleek black vessel covered in weapons and armor plating. Lena studied its design as they walked up the boarding ramp. She noted the engine configuration and the placement of the sensor arrays. Inside the ship, she was placed in a holding cell with 5 other humans from the research station. They looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. Dr. Martinez grabbed her arm as she sat down on the metal bench. Alina, what are you doing? Why didn't you run? Why aren't you scared? Alina looked at her colleague with the same calm curiosity she had shown the Kethfer warriors. Fear is just another variable to control, she said quietly. And I have work to do. The ship's engines roared to life. Lena felt the familiar vibration through the hull, just like she had felt in her lab. She closed her eyes and began to plan. 3 months had passed since the Kethfer captured Alina and her team. The journey to Kethfer Prime took 2 weeks through jump space. Alina spent every day watching and learning. She studied the guards who brought them food. She listened to their conversations and learned their language. She memorized the layout of the ship and the patterns of their daily routines. When they arrived at Kethfer Prime, Alina saw a world covered in massive cities made of black metal and glass. Tall spires reached toward the red sky like the claws of buried giants. The air smelled of sulfur and burned metal. Millions of Kethfer lived here, along with slaves from dozens of other worlds. Alina and her colleagues were separated at the slave market. She watched as Dr. Martinez was sold to work in the mining colonies. Dr. Chen was bought by a wealthy merchant who needed a translator. One by one, her team members were taken away to serve their new masters. But Alina was different, the slave. Traders looked at her and saw something special. She was calm when others panicked. She learned quickly when others struggled. They decided she would bring a higher price in the gladiator arenas. The gladiator compound was a massive complex at the edge of the capital city. Thousands of fighters from across the galaxy lived here. Some were criminals paying for their crimes with blood. Others were slaves forced to fight for the entertainment of their masters. A few were volunteers who fought for money and fame. Alina was given a small cell on the lowest level. The walls were made of thick metal that blocked all sound from outside. Her only furniture was a sleeping mat and a water bowl. The floor was covered in sand that stuck to her bare feet. Every day, trainers came to teach the new fighters how to use weapons and armor. Alina watched, but did not participate. She told them she preferred to fight without weapons or protection. The trainers laughed at her. Humans were known to be weak and slow compared to most other species. You will die in your first fight, said Gractor, the head trainer, was an old Kethfer warrior with missing limbs and deep scars. Humans do not last long in the arena. Alina nodded politely and continued her own training. While other fighters practiced with swords and shields, she moved through slow, careful exercises. She stretched her muscles and practiced her balance. She learned to feel every grain of sand beneath her feet. The other gladiators watched her with confusion and amusement. There was Thokron, a massive creature from the ice worlds, with 4 arms and skin like stone. There was Zillith, a quick lizard being who could move faster than the eye could follow. There was Morden, a warrior from the gas giants who could change the density of his body at will. All of them were killers. All of them had won dozens of fights in arenas across the galaxy, and all of them thought Elena would be dead within minutes of her first battle. Elena's first fight came after 2 weeks of training. She was matched against a Veltar, a spider-like creature with poisonous fangs and 8 razor-sharp legs. The crowd in the arena cheered when they saw the small human enter the fighting pit. They expected a quick and bloody execution. Elena stood in the center of the sand-covered arena floor. Above her, 100,000 alien spectators filled the massive coliseum. Their voices created a roar like thunder. Betting screens around the arena showed odds of 500 to 1 against the human surviving more than 30 seconds. The Veltar scuttled into the arena from the opposite gate. It was twice Elena's size, with a body covered in black chitin and eyes like glowing red coals. Poison dripped from its fangs and sizzled when it hit the sand. Elena did not move as the creature approached. She stood with her feet slightly apart, her hands relaxed at her sides. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her heart rate remained perfectly normal. The Veltar circled her, looking for the best angle of attack. Elena turned slowly to keep facing it, but she made no aggressive moves. To the crowd, she looked like a frightened animal frozen with fear. The Veltar struck without warning. It leaped forward with all 8 legs extended, aiming to impale Elena on its sharp claws. The crowd held its breath, expecting to see blood. But Elena was not there when the creature landed. She had moved aside at the last possible moment, flowing like water around the attack. The Veltar crashed into the sand where she had been standing. Before the creature could recover, Elena was behind it. She placed her hands on a specific spot where its head joined its body. She pressed gently, and the Veltar collapsed instantly. Its nervous system shut down as Elena applied pressure to a cluster of nerve endings that she had studied in her research. The arena fell silent. No one could believe what they had just seen. The small human had defeated a trained killer without using any weapons or showing any violence. She had simply touched it in the right place. Elena walked back to the center of the arena. She stood calmly in the sand, waiting for the next challenge. The crowd began to murmur and whisper. Some thought it was luck. Others wondered if the human had used some kind of poison or hidden weapon. Over the next 3 months, Elena fought 17 more battles. She defeated creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than any human. She beat a Thorian rock beast by finding the weak spot. In its stone armor, she stopped a Nexian energy being by disrupting its electromagnetic field with precise movements. She outlasted a Gorvian berserker by letting it exhaust itself while she stayed perfectly calm. With each victory, the crowd grew more interested in the strange human fighter. They had never seen anyone fight the way she did. First, she never showed anger or fear. She simply observed her opponents and found their weaknesses. Elena learned the Kethver language by listening to the guards and spectators. She understood that she was becoming famous throughout the Empire. Wealthy aliens placed huge bets on her fights. Some wanted to buy her as a personal bodyguard. Others wanted to study her fighting techniques. But Elena was not interested in fame or money. She was gathering information. She learned the names of important Kethver leaders. She memorized the layout of the gladiator compound and the surrounding city. She studied the security systems and guard rotations. Most importantly, she learned about Apex Warlord Zokt H. Zokt H was the greatest gladiator in Kethver history. He had never lost a fight in 15 years of competition. His exoskeleton was harder than diamond, strengthened by genetic modifications and cybernetic implants. His claws could cut through steel. His speed was faster than most humans could. Even Zax had killed over 300 opponents in the arena. He was scheduled to fight Elena in the Grand Championship match that would take place in 1 week. The entire Kethver Empire would be watching. Elena spent her final week of preparation in meditation and observation. She studied videos of all of Zek's previous fights. She noted how he moved, how he attacked, and how he defended himself. She identified the tiny weaknesses that no one else had ever noticed. On the night before the fight, Alina sat in her cell and looked at her reflection in the metal wall. Her body was lean and strong from months of training. Her mind was sharp and focused from constant study. Her bare feet had developed thick calluses from walking on sand and stone. She was ready the next morning. Guards came to escort her to the arena. As they walked through the corridors, Alina could hear the roar of the crowd above. 100,000 aliens had come to watch the human die at the hands of their greatest champion. Alina stepped into the bright sunlight of the arena floor. The sand felt warm and familiar beneath her feet. She walked to the center of the fighting pit and waited. On the opposite side of the arena, a massive gate began to open. The crowd erupted in cheers as Apex Warlord Zakti emerged from the shadows. He was 8 feet tall and covered in scars from countless battles. His exoskeleton gleamed like black metal in the sunlight. Alina looked at him with the same calm curiosity she had shown to her fungi samples months ago. She was about to face the most dangerous creature in the galaxy, and she was still barefoot. The arena fell silent as Apex Warlord Zack stepped into the sunlight. His massive form cast a long shadow across the sand. Every step he took made the ground shake slightly. His forearms moved with perfect coordination, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal. Alina stood 30 feet away, watching him approach. She looked tiny compared to the 8-foot-tall champion. Her bare feet were planted firmly in the warm sand. Her hands hung loose at her sides. Her breathing remained slow and steady. The crowd began to chant Zakas's name. They had watched him kill hundreds of opponents over the years. Some fights lasted only seconds. The longest had been 3 minutes, and that was against a heavily armored war machine from the Outer Rim. Alina had studied every recording of Zack's previous battles. She knew he preferred to start with a charging attack that would crush his opponents before they could react. His speed was his greatest advantage. Most fighters never had time to plan a defense. But Alina was not most fighters. Zack stopped 20 feet away and raised all 4 arms above his head. The crowd roared its approval. He had never been defeated. He had never even been seriously injured. His black exoskeleton showed scratches from countless battles, but no real damage. "I've heard of you, little human," Zack said, in perfect standard galactic. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. "You have defeated 18 opponents without using weapons. Impressive for such a weak species." Lena tilted her head slightly, studying his posture. "Your left shoulder joint shows signs of old damage," she said calmly. "The way you hold that arm suggests reduced flexibility. When did you injure it?" Zack's compound eyes blinked in surprise. No opponent had ever asked him questions during a fight. Most were too busy screaming or praying to speak at all. 5 years ago, he answered without thinking, "Thorian rock beast. Managed to crack the joint before I killed it. But it has healed stronger than before." Lena nodded and made a mental note. "And your breathing pattern indicates that your spiracles on the right side process oxygen less efficiently than the left. Do you have scar tissue blocking the airways?" The great warrior stared at her in confusion. "How could you possibly know that?" "I study anatomy," Alina replied. "All anatomies, even yours." Zack clicked his mandibles in annoyance. This human was strange and unsettling. She should be afraid. Should be preparing to fight or preparing to die. Instead, she was conducting a medical examination. "Enough talk," Zack growled. "Let us begin." The arena master's voice boomed across the Colosseum. "Let the combat begin." Zoctim immediately launched himself forward with incredible speed. His forearms spread wide to prevent Alina from dodging to either side. His claws gleamed in the sunlight as he closed the distance in less than 2 seconds. Alina watched him approach with the same calm focus she used to observe her microscopic specimens. Time seemed to slow down as she calculated angles and trajectories. At the last possible moment, she moved, but she did not move away from Zack's. She moved toward him. Alina stepped forward and slightly to the right, flowing around his leading arm like water around a stone. Her movement was so smooth and precise that Zaketh Claws passed within inches of her body without touching her. Zaketh crashed into the sand where Alina had been standing. He rolled quickly and spun to face her, his compound eyes wide with surprise. No one had ever moved through his charge attack before. It's impossible, he muttered. Alina was already moving again. She circled him slowly, her bare feet making no sound on the sand. Her eyes never left his body, studying the way he moved and breathed. Zaketh attacked again, this time with a series of rapid claw strikes. His forearms moved in a complex pattern that had defeated every opponent he had ever faced. The attacks came from multiple angles at once, too fast for most creatures to follow. Alina flowed between the strikes like smoke. She bent and twisted, her body in ways that seemed impossible. Each claw missed her by the smallest possible margin. She was not trying to block or parry his attacks. She was simply not there when they arrived. The crowd had gone completely silent. They had never seen anything like this. The small human was making their greatest champion look clumsy and slow. She moved with a grace that defied physics. Zaketh grew frustrated, increased the speed and power of his attacks. His claws tore deep furrows in the sand and sent up clouds of dust. But Alina continued to slip through his defenses, like she was dancing to music only she could hear. After 2 full minutes of missing every strike, Zaketh paused to catch his breath. His spiracles were working hard to process oxygen. Sweat dripped from beneath his exoskeleton. "How are you doing this?" he demanded. Alina stopped circling and faced him directly. "You attack with a pattern," she explained calmly. "Your left arms always strike 0.3 seconds before your right arms. Your high attacks come in groups of 3. Your low attacks come in groups of 2. Once I understood the pattern, avoiding them became simple mathematics." Zaketh stared at her, in disbelief. She had analyzed his fighting style during combat and found its weaknesses in real time. No opponent had ever done anything like that before. "But you are just a human," he said. "Your species is weak and slow. Weak and slow compared to you." "Yes," Alina agreed. "But we are very good at learning. I have been learning about you." For 3 months, Zaketh charged again, this time trying to vary his attack pattern. But Alina had already identified 17 different variations in his style from watching his old fights. She knew what he would do before he did it. She flowed around his attacks like water flowing around rocks in a stream. Her movements were efficient and graceful. She wasted no energy on unnecessary actions. Every step and every gesture had a purpose. As Zaketh grew more tired, Alina began to strike back. But her attacks were nothing like what the crowd expected. She did not try to punch or kick him. Instead, she touched specific points on his exoskeleton with her fingertips. Each touch was gentle and precise. Alina pressed nerve clusters that disrupted his coordination. She struck pressure points that caused temporary paralysis in individual limbs. She found the exact spots where his cybernetic implants connected to his nervous system and interfered with their signals. Zaketh stumbled as his left arm went numb. He shook his head to clear his vision as Alina touched a point near his neck that affected his balance. His attacks became wild and uncontrolled as she systematically shut down his body's systems. "What are you doing to me?" he gasped. "I am turning off your body one piece at a time," Alina said softly. "Your nervous system has 347 major pressure points. I have studied the anatomy of your species for months. I know where each one is located." She reached out and touched another spot on his chest. Zaketh's right leg collapsed beneath him. He fell to one knee in the sand, struggling to understand what was happening to him. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their undefeated champion was systematically dismantled by a barefoot human who looked like she was giving him a gentle massage. Alina circled behind Zaketh and placed her hands on either side of his neck. She found the cluster of nerves that controlled his primary motor functions. With careful pressure from her thumbs, she began to shut down his voluntary muscle control. "This is impossible," Zaketh whispered. "Humans do not have this kind of knowledge." "Humans have one advantage that most species lack," Alina replied. "We are endurance predators. We do not give up. When we encounter something we cannot overcome with strength or speed, We study it until we understand it completely. Then we find its weakness. She applied more pressure to the nerve cluster. Zach's arms went limp at his sides. His great strength meant nothing if he could not control his muscles. I have spent 3 months studying your species, Elena continued. I know exactly how your bodies work. I know your weaknesses better than you do. With one final touch, Elena pressed a point at the base of Zach's skull. The apex warlord's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed forward into the sand. He was still alive and breathing, but completely unconscious. Elena stood over his fallen form, still calm and composed. Her bare feet were planted firmly in the sand beside the body of the greatest warrior in HFY history. She had defeated him without throwing a single punch or causing any permanent damage. The arena was completely silent. 100,000 alien spectators stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. Their champion, their invincible apex warlord, lay unconscious at the feet of a small human female. Elena looked up at the crowd and then at the viewing box where the HFY Emperor sat with his advisors. She could see the fear in their compound eyes as they realized what they had just witnessed. A human had not just won a gladiator fight. She had demonstrated that their entire understanding of her species was completely wrong. The silence in the arena stretched for nearly a full minute. 100,000 alien spectators stared at the impossible scene before them. Apex Warlord Zach, undefeated champion of 15 years, lay unconscious in the sand at the feet of a small human. Woman Elena stood perfectly still beside his fallen form. Her bare feet were planted firmly in the warm sand. Her breathing remained calm and steady. She looked up at the Emperor's viewing box and waited. Emperor Vexcarl rose slowly from his throne. His ancient exoskeleton was covered in gold and precious metals that marked his royal status. His compound eyes glowed with fury and confusion. In all his years of rule, nothing like this had ever happened in his arena. Impossible. The Emperor's voice boomed through the arena's sound system. No human could defeat Zox in fair combat. He must have used poison or some hidden weapon. Elena looked directly at the Emperor's box and spoke in perfect HFY. Her pronunciation was flawless, her grammar precise. The crowd gasped in surprise. Very few humans had ever learned their language. I used no weapons. Your Magnificence, Elena said calmly. I used only knowledge. Would you like me to explain? What I did? The Emperor's mandibles clicked together rapidly. The fact that this human could speak his language was almost as shocking as her victory over Zekth. Explain yourself, human. How did you defeat our greatest warrior? Elena gestured toward Zex's unconscious form. Your champion is still alive and uninjured. In approximately 10 minutes, he will wake up with no permanent damage. I simply disrupted his nervous system using pressure point techniques. She knelt beside Zax and pointed to specific locations on his exoskeleton. HFY anatomy has several vulnerable points that most of your species do not know about. Here, at the base of the neck, is a cluster of nerves that control voluntary muscle movement. When pressed correctly, it causes temporary paralysis. Elena moved her hand to another spot. This location affects balance and coordination. This one disrupts visual processing. This one interferes with the cybernetic implants that many warriors use to enhance their abilities. The crowd murmured and chittered as Elena continued her anatomy lesson. She was calmly explaining how to defeat any HFY warrior using nothing but precise finger pressure. But how could you know these things? Demanded General Croakter from the Emperor's box. This knowledge is secret. Even our own warriors do not know about these pressure points. Elena stood and faced the viewing box again. I learned by observation and study. For 3 months, I watched your guards, your trainers, and your fighters. I studied how you move, how you breathe, and how your bodies respond to different types of stress. She gestured to the arena around her. Every day, I saw HFY warriors training and fighting. I watched injured fighters receive medical treatment. I observed how your doctors examined patients and treated wounds. I learned where your bodies are strong and where they are weak. Lena's voice carried clearly through the silent arena. You assume that because humans appear physically weak, we must be mentally weak as well. But you were wrong. Humans are learning creatures. When we encounter something we cannot overpower, we study it until we understand it completely. Emperor Thexgirl clicked his mandibles nervously. But you are just one human. Even if you know our weaknesses, you are still vastly outnumbered. Am I? Alina asked quietly. How many humans have you captured over the years? How many are working in your mines, your factories, your households? How many are serving as gladiators in arenas across your empire? The Emperor's advisors began whispering urgently among themselves. Alina could see the worry in their compound eyes as they realized the implications of her words. Every human you have enslaved is learning about your species, Alina continued. We do not forget what we observe. We share information with each other whenever possible. We are patient creatures who think in terms of years and decades, not just immediate survival. She pointed to different sections of the crowd. Look around this arena. How many different species do you see? How many worlds have you conquered? How many races have you enslaved? You believe this makes you powerful? Lena's voice grew stronger. But each species you dominate teaches you their weaknesses. You'll learn to exploit them more efficiently. Humans are different. Each human you capture learns your weaknesses instead. The arena had become completely silent, except for Elena's voice. Even the Kethfer guards seemed frozen in place as they listened to her words. 3 months ago, I was a scientist studying fungi on a research station, Alina said. I had never seen a Kethfer warrior before. I'd never studied your anatomy or your culture, but I'm human, so I learned. She walked slowly around Zekith's unconscious form. I learned that your exoskeletons have stress fractures that develop in predictable patterns. I learned that your cybernetic implants create electromagnetic signatures that can be disrupted. I learned that your respiratory system has specific vulnerabilities. Alina stopped walking and looked directly at the Emperor. Most importantly, I learned that you have enslaved thousands of other humans who are just as capable of learning as I am. The implications of her statements spread through the crowd like wildfire. The Kethver had built their empire on the assumption that the species they conquered would remain helpless and ignorant. But humans were different. You think of us as prey animals, Alina continued, but humans are not prey. We are persistence predators. On our homeworld, we hunted creatures that were bigger, stronger, and faster than us. We did not defeat them through strength. We defeated them by being patient, by learning their habits, and by never giving up. She gestured to the arena around. Her, you brought me here to entertain your crowds with my death. Instead, you have given me a platform to demonstrate what humans are truly capable of when we have time to observe and learn. Emperor Vexcaral leaned forward on his throne. What do you want, human? Do you seek freedom? Wealth? Power? Lena shook her head. I want you to understand what you have done. You have not captured a helpless species to serve as slaves. You've invited teachers into your homes, your factories, and your military bases. Every human you have enslaved is studying you. The Emperor's advisors were chattering frantically now. Alina could see fear replacing confusion in their body language. Right now, there are humans working in your weapons factories who understand. Your technology, better than your own engineers, Alina said. There are humans in your medical facilities who know your anatomy better than your doctors. There are humans in your communication centers who have learned your security codes and protocols. She smiled for the first time since entering the arena. It was not a pleasant expression. You thought you were harvesting slaves, but you were actually gathering intelligence agents. At that moment, Zakth began to stir in the sand. Lena had calculated the exact duration of his unconsciousness. She knelt beside him as his compound eyes fluttered open.
Oh, welcome back, she
said gently in Kethver. How do you feel? Zach struggled to sit up, his movements clumsy and unsteady.
What did you do to me? I showed your people that their greatest champion could be defeated by a human using only knowledge and patience.
Alina replied, Nothing more, nothing less. Zakla looked around the silent arena, then up at the Emperor's box. He could see the fear and uncertainty in every face. The unshakable confidence of the Kethver Empire had been cracked by a single barefoot human. This changes everything, he whispered. Elena nodded. Yes, it does. Your empire was built on the belief that might makes right. But humans have shown that knowledge can defeat might, intelligence can overcome strength, patience can triumph over aggression. She stood and offered her hand to help Zack to his feet. After a moment's hesitation, he accepted her assistance. "The question now," Alina said, looking up at the Emperor's box, "is what you plan to do with this knowledge." The Emperor stared. Down at the two figures in the arena, the defeated champion and the human, who had taught an entire empire to fear what they had never feared before. The power of human intelligence. Alina helped Zack to his feet, but her eyes never left the Emperor's viewing box. The great champion swayed slightly as his nervous system continued to recover from her precise pressure point attacks. The arena remained completely silent, except for the soft sound of sand shifting beneath their feet. Emperor Thexkarl leaned forward on his throne, his compound eyes glowing with a mixture of fear and rage. "Guards," he commanded, "kill the human immediately." 24 Kethfer warriors began moving down the arena steps, their weapons drawn, but Alina did not look worried. Instead, she smiled again and raised one hand. "I would not do that if I were." Your magnificence," she said calmly. The Emperor clicked his mandibles angrily. "You dare threaten me, slave?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Alina replied. "I am simply informing you that killing me would be a very poor decision. You see, I am not the only human who has been learning during these past 3 months." She placed one bare foot on Zex's chest, gently but firmly pushing him back down to the sand. The great warrior did not resist. He understood that she could disable him again with a single touch. At this very moment, Alina continued, "There are humans working in your communication centers who have been monitoring all transmissions across your empire. They know exactly where every human slave is located. They know which ships are carrying prisoners and which facilities are holding workers." The Emperor's advisors began chattering frantically among themselves. Alina could see the worry spreading through the viewing box like a disease. "There are humans in your weapons factories who have been studying your technology for months," Alina said. "They understand how your energy weapons work. They know how to build them, how to modify them, and how to disable them." She gestured toward the crowd of spectators. "There are humans serving food and cleaning floors in this very arena who have been mapping every corridor, every exit, and every security system. They know this building better than your own architects." Alina's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "You thought we were helpless because we did not fight back immediately? But humans understand that the best time to act is when your enemy believes. You are defeated." The advancing guards had stopped halfway down the arena steps. They looked uncertainly at their emperor, waiting for orders that did not come. "What do you want?" Emperor Thexkarl demanded. "I want you to learn what every species in this galaxy should know about humans," Alina replied. "We are not conquerors. We do not seek to dominate others. But we do not accept slavery either." She pointed to different sections of the arena crowd. "Every species here has been conquered by the Kethfer Empire. The Veltar, the Thorians, the Nexians, the Gorvians. All of them fought with their natural weapons and were defeated by your superior technology and numbers." Alina's bare feet shifted slightly in the sand, finding perfect balance. "But humans fight differently. We do not rely on strength or speed or natural weapons. We rely on our ability to learn, to adapt, and to work together." At that moment, something extraordinary began to happen throughout the arena. Kethfer guards and workers who had been standing at their posts began to collapse. They fell unconscious one by one, as if an invisible wave was sweeping through the building. Alina watched calmly as the guards on the arena steps dropped their weapons and fell to the ground. "The humans who have been serving food in this arena have been adding a mild sedative to the water supply," she explained. "It is harmless to most species, but it causes temporary unconsciousness in Kethfer physiology." Emperor Thexkarl tried to stand, but his legs gave out beneath him. He gripped the arms of his throne as his vision began to blur. "The sedative was developed from fungi samples that I collected during my research," Alina said. "I shared the formula with other human prisoners through a simple code that we scratched into the walls of our cells. Your guards thought we were making random marks to pass the time." More Kethfer throughout the arena were falling unconscious. Even Zack was struggling to stay awake beneath Alina's foot. Only the non-Kethfer species in the crowd remained alert, watching in amazement as their captors collapsed around them. "This is our statement to your empire," Alina announced, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "Humans do not make good slaves because we never stop learning and we never stop planning. Every day you kept us captive, we became more dangerous." She removed her foot from Zex's chest as the great warrior finally succumbed to the sedative. Then she walked to the center of the arena and addressed the confused crowd of non-Kethfer spectators. "To all the enslaved species here today," she called out, "this is your opportunity. The human slaves throughout this arena complex are opening the doors and disabling the security systems. You can leave now and return to your homeworlds." Elena paused and looked around the massive coliseum. "Or you can stay and help us free the other slaves throughout the Kethfer Empire. The choice is yours." She turned back toward the Emperor's viewing box, where Thex Coral was fighting to remain conscious. "Your Magnificence, I hope you understand now why enslaving humans was a mistake. We are not a species that accepts captivity quietly." The Emperor managed to speak one last time before the sedative took full effect. "What happens now?" Lena considered the question carefully. "Now every human in your empire will be free to return home. Your slave markets will be closed. Your gladiator arenas will be shut down. And you will need to find a new way to build your civilization that does not depend on enslaving others." She walked toward the arena exit, her bare feet making soft sounds on the sand. "But do not worry, Your Magnificence. Humans are not interested in ruling other species. We simply want to be left alone to pursue our own lives and research." As Alina reached the arena gate, she turned back one final time. "However, if you ever attempt to enslave humans again, you will discover that we have shared our knowledge with every other species in the galaxy. You will find that your former victims have learned some very interesting things about Kethfer anatomy and technology." The gate opened as human prisoners in the control rooms activated the mechanisms. Alina stepped through into the corridor beyond, where dozens of freed slaves from various species were waiting for her. Dr. Martinez was among them, along with several other members of her original research team. "Alina," he said with amazement, "how did you plan all of this?" Alina smiled as she walked barefoot down the corridor, leading the group toward freedom. "I told you 3 months ago, fear is just another variable to control, and I had work to do." Behind them, the great arena of Kethfer Prime lay silent, except for the sound of freed slaves opening cell doors and dismantling security systems. The Kethfer Empire would survive, but it would never again mistake human intelligence for human weakness. Elena Vasquez, the barefoot scientist who had started this day as a gladiator, was walking free. And with her walked the knowledge that humans, when given time to think and learn, could overcome any obstacle through patience, intelligence, and cooperation. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when humanity proved that the strongest chains could be broken not by force, by the simple power of human curiosity and determination. Elena's soft footsteps echoed through the corridors as she began her long journey home, knowing that she had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever.